You know that moment when your entire world shifts and you don't even hear it crack? That's what happened to me on a Tuesday afternoon in our kitchen in Denver. Sunlight streaming through the window like nothing had changed. Hadn't just tilted off its axis. Sarah was making her morning smoothie, the blender drowning out everything except the sound of my heart breaking in real time. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Just once, a simple notification that would unravel. 7 years of marriage, 13 years together, and every single belief I had about the woman I thought I knew. She was in the shower upstairs, singing off-key like she always did when she was happy. And I was just reaching for my coffee when I saw the message preview light up her screen. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for tonight when David's at his conference. The sender was listed as M with a heart emoji. My name is David. I was supposed to leave for a marketing conference in Phoenix that afternoon. I stood there, coffee mug halfway to my lips, staring at those words like they were written in a foreign language. My brain kept trying to make them mean something else, anything else. Maybe it was a friend talking about a movie. Maybe it was about a surprise party. Maybe it was a mistake, a wrong number, a glitch in the matrix that would resolve itself if I just blinked hard enough. But my gut knew. My gut knew with the kind of certainty that makes your knees weak and your vision blur around the edges. Sarah was having an affair, and she was planning to see him while I was away. I set the mug down with shaking hands and heard the shower turn off upstairs. Without thinking, I grabbed her phone and took a photo of that message with mine. The evidence, the proof, the beginning of the end. Let me tell you about Sarah before I tell you about what she became. Sarah, with her laugh that could fill a room, who used to wear my old college sweatshirts to bed and steal the last bite of my dessert with no shame. Sarah, who cried at dog adoption commercials and made elaborate birthday cakes for our friends. Kids. Sarah, who would curl up against me during thunderstorms even though she was 32 years old and perfectly capable of weathering a little rain alone. We met in college, both studying communications at University of Colorado. She was this bright, electric thing who talked with her hands and had opinions about everything from local politics to the best coffee shop in Boulder. I was quieter, more analytical, drawn to her energy like a moth to flame. She made me feel more interesting than I was, more adventurous, more alive. Our first date lasted 14 hours. We went for coffee at 2 p.m. and ended up watching the sunrise from her apartment balcony, talking about everything and nothing, her head on my shoulder as the sky turned pink and gold. I knew that morning that I would marry her, not because of some grand romantic revelation, but because being with her felt like coming home to a place I didn't know, I'd been searching for. The proposal happened 5 years later on that same balcony. I had planned something elaborate, a whole weekend in Aspen with roses and champagne and a photographer hidden in the trees. But that morning she was making pancakes in one of my old t-shirts, humming and swaying to music only she could hear, and I just couldn't wait anymore. I got down on one knee right there in our kitchen, ring box sticky with pancake batter, and asked her to marry me while she was still holding a spatula. She said yes before I could even finish the question. Our wedding was perfect in that imperfect way that real life is perfect. It rained during the ceremony, so we had to move everything inside. Sarah's heel broke during our first dance. The cake was lopsided because my nephew had poked it earlier, and half the flowers wilted in the heat. But Sarah glowed with this radiant joy that made everything else fade into background noise. She kept catching my eye during the reception and grinning like we were sharing the world's best secret. That was 7 years ago. 7 years of building a life together, of learning each other's rhythms and habits and dreams. 7 years of her stealing my coffee in the mornings and me pretending to be annoyed. 7 years of her falling asleep during every movie we watched, and me covering her with a blanket and turning down the volume. 7 years of inside jokes and shared silences and the kind of comfortable intimacy that makes you think you know someone completely. I thought I knew her completely, but standing there in our kitchen staring at that message on her phone, I realized I had been living with a stranger. Or maybe I had been living with the Sarah she used to be, and this new Sarah. This Sarah, who could plan secret meetings with someone named M while I was out of town, was someone I had never met. The shower upstairs stopped running. I heard her, moving around in the bathroom, probably doing her elaborate skincare routine. taking her time because she thought she had all morning to prepare for whatever was happening tonight. I had maybe 3 minutes before she came downstairs. Wrapped in that blue robe I had bought her for Christmas, smiling and kissing my cheek and asking if I was excited about my conference. 3 minutes to decide what to do with this information that was burning a hole in my chest. I could confront her immediately, demand answers, start the fight that would end everything right there in our kitchen, with the morning light still soft and forgiving. But something held me back. Maybe it was the part of me that still didn't want to believe it was real. Maybe it was the part that needed more than one text message to destroy 13 years, or maybe it was the part that was already calculating, already thinking 3 steps ahead, already understanding that if this was really happening, I needed more than just suspicion and hurt feelings. I put her phone back exactly where I found it and went upstairs to pack for Phoenix. "You're up early," Sarah said when she came into the bedroom, toweling her hair dry. She was beautiful in that effortless way that had always undone me, skin glowing from the hot shower, no makeup, completely unsullied. How could someone who looked like that, like sunshine and warmth and everything good in the world, be capable of what I thought she was capable of? "Couldn't sleep," I said, folding shirts with mechanical precision. Nervous about the presentation, I guess she sat on the edge of the bed and watched me pack. "You'll be brilliant. You always are." I looked at her, searching her face for some sign of guilt or deception or anything that would confirm what I suspected. But she just looked like Sarah, my Sarah, the woman who had promised to love and honor and cherish me until death do us part. "I'll miss you," she said softly, and leaned over to kiss my cheek. I closed my eyes and breathed in the scent of her shampoo, the same lavender scent that had been on my pillow for 7 years. "I'll miss you too. And God help me, I meant it. Even knowing what I knew, suspecting what I suspected, I meant it. The conference in Phoenix was supposed to last 3 days. I had presentations to give, networking events to attend, colleagues to impress. Instead, I spent the first night in my hotel room staring at the ceiling and trying to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe M was a girlfriend. Maybe the message was about something innocent. Maybe I was losing my mind, seeing betrayal where there was only normal, explainable human behavior. But at 2 a.m, lying in that generic hotel bed with the air conditioning humming too loud and the city lights painting strange shadows on the wall, I admitted the truth to myself. I wasn't wrong. I knew Sarah. I knew her tells, her patterns, her ways of moving through the world, and something had changed. The distance had been growing for months. The way she guarded her phone, taking it to the bathroom, sleeping with it, face down, jumping slightly when it buzzed while we were together. The way she had started working late more often, going out for drinks with the girls from her marketing firm, coming home with stories that felt rehearsed, explanations that were just a little too detailed, the way she had stopped really looking at me when we talked, her eyes skating past mine like she was afraid I might see something she didn't want me to see, the way she had stopped touching me with that unconscious affection that married couples develop, those little brushes of connection. Throughout the day, no more hand on my shoulder when she passed behind my chair. No more fingers trailing across my back when she reached for something in the kitchen. No more curling against me while we watched TV, her body seeking mine without thought or intention. The sex. God, the sex. It hadn't stopped exactly, but it had changed. There was a distance, even in our most intimate moments, like she was there, but not really there, like part of her was somewhere else, with someone else. I had attributed it all to stress, to the demands of her job, to the natural ebb and flow. Of a long marriage, people go through phases. People get distracted. People need space sometimes to figure out what they want. I had given her that space, that benefit of the doubt, that trust that comes with loving someone for 13 years. But trust is a fragile thing. Once you start questioning it, once you start looking for cracks, you see them everywhere. I called in sick to the conference the next morning and flew home. It was a Thursday afternoon when I pulled into our driveway in my rental car, the house looking exactly the same as it had when I left 2 days earlier. Same white picket fence that Sarah had insisted on, even though we both knew it was a cliché. Same garden that she tended with religious devotion every weekend. Same blue shutters that we had painted together 3 summers ago, getting more paint on each other than on the wood dot. Same house, same life, same marriage that was apparently built. On lies, Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway, which wasn't unusual. She often ran errands on her lunch break, hit the gym, met friends for coffee, but there was another car parked across the street that I didn't recognize. A black BMW with Colorado plates. I memorized the license number without really knowing. Why, some instinct for evidence already kicking in, I let myself into the house and immediately felt the wrongness. Not anything obvious, not lipstick on my collar, or strange cologne in the air, or anything dramatic like that. Just a sense that the energy was different, that someone had been here who didn't belong. In the kitchen, there were 2 coffee mugs. In the sink, 2 plates with crumbs from what looked like the cinnamon rolls Sarah made only for special occasions. In the living room, the couch cushions were arranged differently than I would have left them. In our bedroom, the bed was made, but not quite right. The pillows positioned in a way that Sarah never positioned them. These were small things, tiny things, the kind of things you could explain away if you wanted to, if you were determined to maintain the illusion that your marriage was what you thought it was. But I didn't want to explain them away anymore. I wanted the truth. I went to my home office and pulled out the small recording device I used for interviews and client meetings. It was tiny, no bigger than a thumb drive, with a battery that could last for hours. I placed it in the living room, tucked behind a picture frame on the mantel where it would be invisible, but could pick up conversation from anywhere in the main floor. Then I went back to the airport and caught the next flight to Phoenix. Sarah was delighted to hear from me that evening. "I thought your phone was broken," she said when I called. "I've been texting you all day." "Sorry, back-to-back meetings." I lied. "How's your day been?" "Oh, boring. I worked from home, did some grocery shopping, watched too much Netflix." "I missed you." The ease with which she lied was breathtaking. The casual way she constructed a false reality and presented it to me like a gift, expecting me to smile and accept it and ask for more. "I missed you too," I said, and that, at least, was true. I flew home Friday afternoon and retrieved the recording device before Sarah got back from work. What I heard in those few hours of audio changed everything. Her voice, bright and happy. "I can't believe we have the whole afternoon. David never gets back early from anything." A man's voice, unfamiliar, deeper than mine. "Lucky me, lucky us." Sarah, laughing, "I made those cinnamon rolls you like, and coffee. Real coffee, not that instant stuff." The man, "You're going to spoil me, Sarah. That's the idea." And then sounds I didn't want to identify. Movement and murmurs and the unmistakable rhythm of intimacy in my living room. On my couch, in the home we had built together, with our dreams and promises and wedding photos still hanging on the walls. Sat in my car in our driveway, listening to my wife make love to another man, and felt something inside me die. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or explosions or the kind of searing pain you see in movies. Just a quiet death, a slow extinguishing, like a candle burning out in an empty room. When it was over, when their voices faded into contented murmurs, and soft laughter, I heard her say, "David's conference goes until Sunday. We could do this again tomorrow." And the man, "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." Sarah, "Good, because I don't think I can go back to pretending anymore. Not after this." That was the moment I understood that this wasn't just an affair. This was an ending. This was Sarah choosing someone else, choosing a different life, choosing to burn down everything we had built together. She just hadn't told me yet. I turned off the recording and sat in the gathering dusk, watching the lights come on in our house, knowing that Sarah was inside, probably showering, probably erasing all evidence of what had happened, preparing to greet me with a smile and a kiss and questions about my conference. I could go in there right now and confront her. I could play the recording and watch her face, crumble and demand explanations and apologies and promises that it would never happen again. I could fight for our marriage, plead for counseling, beg her to remember what we used to have, but I didn't want to beg. I didn't want to fight for someone who had already made her choice. I didn't want to be the pathetic husband who catches his wife cheating and immediately starts negotiating for scraps of her attention. I wanted something else, something colder, something more final. I wanted her to understand what she had done, what she had destroyed, what she had chosen to walk away from. I wanted her to face the consequences of her choices with the same clarity she had apparently used to make them, in for the night. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to handle this with the dignity and intelligence that Sarah had apparently decided I didn't deserve. The next morning, I called my brother Jake. Jake was a private investigator in Seattle, specializing in corporate fraud and domestic cases. He was also the only person I trusted completely. The only person who would help me without asking too many questions or trying to talk me out of whatever I was planning. "I need your help," I said without preamble when he answered, "What kind of help? The kind you're good at? The kind that requires cameras and documents and irrefutable proof?" There was a pause. Sarah, another pause. "How do you want to do this?" I loved my brother in that moment with a fierce gratitude that almost brought me to tears. No judgment. No lectures about working things out or giving her another chance or considering counseling. Just simple, practical support from someone who understood that sometimes the only way through is through. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I need evidence, real evidence, the kind that holds up in court." "Okay, I can be there by Tuesday. Can you wait that long?" "I've waited this long without knowing. I can wait a few more days now that I do." That weekend was surreal. Sarah and I played house, going through the motions of our normal routine while I watched her with new eyes, cataloging every lie, every deception, every moment of casual betrayal. She made pancakes on Saturday morning, the same recipe she had been making for 7 years. She curled up next to me on the couch for movie night, her head on my shoulder, her hand resting on my chest like it belonged there. She kissed me goodnight and told me she loved me, and I kissed her back and told her I loved her too. And neither of us was lying exactly, but we were both talking about different people, different versions of ourselves that maybe didn't exist anymore. Jake arrived on Tuesday with equipment and expertise and a grim determination that matched my own. He was younger than me by 3 years, but had always been the more serious one, the one who thought things through, who planned for contingencies, who understood that the world was not always fair, but could be made accountable. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did the text message, the recording, the coffee mugs, and the rearranged cushions, and the BMW parked across the street. The months of distance and distraction, and the growing sense that I was living with someone who was slowly becoming a stranger. Jake listened without interruption, taking notes, asking clarifying questions, treating my broken heart like a case file that needed to be organized and understood. "Do you know who he is?" he asked. "Just M from her phone." "We'll figure it out. What do you want out of this?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Simply the truth? Or just the freedom to walk away with my dignity, intact in the knowledge that I hadn't been a fool, that my instincts had been right, that the love I thought we shared had been real even if it wasn't anymore? "I want her to understand what she's done," I said finally. "I want her to face the reality of her choices, and I want to make sure that when this is over, when the divorce is finalized, there's no question about who was faithful and who wasn't." Jake nodded. "We can do that, but you need to be sure. Once we start down this road, there's no going back. You'll have information you can't unknow, evidence you can't unsee. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Sarah laughing with her mystery man in our living room. I thought about her lying to my face over coffee and cinnamon rolls. I thought about her planning future encounters while I was away, treating our marriage like an inconvenience to be worked around rather than a commitment to be honored. I'm ready. The next phase was waiting and watching and gathering evidence. With the methodical patience of a scientist conducting an important experiment, Jake installed tiny cameras in strategic locations around the house, all legal, all positioned to capture common areas where I had every right to record. He ran background checks and cross-referenced phone numbers and gradually assembled a picture of who M was and how long this had been going on. His name was Marcus Webb. He was 35, divorced, worked in finance at a firm downtown that occasionally did business with Sarah's marketing company. They had met at a networking event 6 months ago. 6 months of secret meetings and hidden phone calls and elaborate lies to cover their tracks. 6 months of my wife building a relationship with another man, while I worried about whether she was getting enough sleep, whether her work stress was too much, whether she needed more support from me to be happy. The cameras captured everything. Sarah letting Marcus into our house on the days when I was at work or traveling, the two of them cooking together in our kitchen, eating meals at our dining room table, making themselves comfortable in the space that was supposed to be ours, making love in our bed on the afternoon when I was at a client meeting across town. The sheets rumpled and their voices carrying through the house like they owned it. Watching those recordings was like having surgery without anesthesia. Necessary, but excruciating. Each video was another small death, another piece of my marriage dissolving in real time. But I watched them all. I forced myself to see everything, to understand the scope of what had been happening right under my nose. The worst part wasn't the physical betrayal, though that was devastating enough. The worst part was seeing how happy she was with him, how relaxed and natural and completely herself in a way that she hadn't been with me in months. The way she laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she talked, looked at him with the kind of open affection that I remembered from our early days together. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was falling in love with someone else, had maybe already fallen. I had been grieving the end of my marriage, but I realized now that the marriage had ended months ago. I had just been the last to know. The confrontation came on a Thursday evening. In October, Sarah was supposed to be at a work dinner. Another one of those elaborate lies that I now understood were cover stories for Time with Marcus. But Marcus was out of town that week on business, and I knew from Jake's surveillance that she was actually at home, probably planning to spend the evening working or watching Netflix, or doing whatever she did when she wasn't actively betraying me. I came home early with a bottle of wine and takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. Playing the role of the thoughtful husband, surprising his wife with an impromptu date night, she was in the living room when I walked in, laptop open, scattered, papers around her, looking genuinely surprised to see me. "David, I thought you were working late tonight." "Change of plans?" I said, holding up the food. "Thought we could have dinner together." Her smile was radiant, completely convincing, the same smile that had made me fall in love with her all those years ago. "That sounds perfect." We ate on the couch, sharing pad thai and talking about our days. And for a moment, I could almost pretend that this was real, that we were still the people we used to be, that the videos on Jake's hard drive were someone else's nightmare. But then her phone buzzed, and I saw her eyes flick to it with that reflexive hunger that I now recognized as the look of someone expecting communication from a lover. She didn't check it while I was watching, but I could see the effort it took, the way her attention split between me and the device sitting face down on the coffee table. "Sarah," I said quietly, "we need to talk." Something in my tone must have warned her, because her face changed, became more guarded, more careful. "Okay, what about?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope that Jake had prepared. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages, dates and times of Marcus's visits to our house, financial records showing credit, card charges at restaurants and hotels that didn't match the stories she had told me. I set the envelope on the coffee table between us, next to her phone and the empty takeout containers. "About Marcus," I said. The color drained from her face so quickly that for a moment I was genuinely worried she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. "David, I can explain, can you?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Can you explain 6 months of lying to me? Can you explain bringing him into our house, into our bed, while I was at work? Can you explain planning your future with him while pretending to plan ours with me?" Tears started streaming down her face, but they felt calculated somehow, like another performance in a long series of performances she had been giving me. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you, but you did mean to lie to me," I said. "Every day for 6 months. Every time you kissed me goodbye. Every time you told me you loved me. Every time you came home from being with him and let me hold you like nothing had changed." She was crying harder now, her whole body shaking. "I do love you. I've always loved you. This thing with Marcus, it's not about love. It's about, I don't know what it's about. I just got lost somewhere." I looked at her, this woman I had shared my life with for 13 years, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly, though there was plenty of that. Not even sadness, though the sadness was there too, vast and deep and permanent. What I felt was clarity, cold, clean clarity about who she was and who I was and what needed to happen next. "You weren't lost," I said. "You made choices, deliberate, calculated choices. You chose to meet him. You chose to bring him here. You chose to lie to me about where you were and who you were with. You chose to plan a future with him while maintaining a marriage with me. Those weren't accidents. Those were decisions. She reached for me then, her hand trembling as she tried to touch my face. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end it with him. I'll do whatever it takes. I gently moved her hand away. It's too late for that. No, it's not, David. Please, I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We've been together for 13 years. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for everything, I said. That's why this hurts so much. I stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at our neighborhood, our life, our carefully constructed world that was about to come apart. I filed for divorce yesterday, I said without turning around. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. The sound she made was barely human, a keening wail that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. I heard her collapse onto the couch. Behind me, heard her gasping for breath between sobs. You can't, she said finally. You can't just throw away everything we've built. I turned to face her then, and she looked so small and broken that part of me wanted to comfort her, to hold her, to tell her that maybe we could find a way through this after all. But that part of me had been making excuses for too long, had been accepting too little, had been willing to live with lies for the sake of preserving something that was already gone. I'm not throwing it away, I said. You already did that. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Jake's evidence, it was comprehensive and damning, leaving no room for interpretation or negotiation. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue for reconciliation, for mediation, for a more equitable distribution of assets. But Colorado is a no-fault state, and adultery doesn't legally matter for property division. What it mattered for was my peace of mind. The knowledge that I hadn't been paranoid or jealous or crazy. The certainty that my instincts had been right. That the distance I felt had been real. That the marriage I thought I was fighting for had already been over 4 months. Sarah moved out of the house 3 weeks after. I confronted her. She went to stay with her sister in Boulder, taking only her clothes and personal items, leaving behind all the shared history of our life together. The wedding photos, the furniture we had picked out together, the books we had read to each other, the kitchen gadgets she had insisted we needed, and I had grumbled about buying. She left it all, and I wasn't sure if it was because she didn't want the reminders, or because she understood that she had forfeited the right to them. Marcus, predictably, disappeared as soon as things got complicated. Jake's investigation revealed that he had a pattern of relationships with married women, that Sarah wasn't his first affair, and probably wouldn't be his last. When Sarah called him after our confrontation, looking for support and comfort and promises about their future together, he told her he thought they should take a break until things settled down. He never called her back. Sarah tried to contact me several times in the weeks that followed, texts asking if we could talk, voicemails apologizing and explaining and pleading for another chance, a letter delivered to my office asking me to remember the good times, the love we had shared, the dreams we had built together. I didn't respond to any of it, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. Because every time I heard her voice or saw her handwriting, I felt myself wavering, felt the old love and loyalty trying to resurrect itself, felt the temptation to believe that maybe we could find our way back to each other, but love without trust is just emotional quicksand. The harder you struggle to make it work, the deeper you sink. And I had been sinking for months without even realizing it, drowning in my own willingness to explain away the inexplicable, to forgive the unforgivable, from someone who is saving the feast for someone else. The divorce was finalized on a gray December morning, 6 months after I found that first text message. Sarah didn't contest anything by then. Her lawyer had advised her that fighting would only drag out the process and cost more money, and she didn't have the resources for a prolonged battle. She signed the papers with shaking hands and tear-stained cheeks, but she signed them. I felt no triumph in that moment, no sense of victory or vindication, just a profound exhaustion, like I had been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. That evening, I sat in the house that was now officially mine, alone, surrounded by the detritus of a 13-year relationship, and tried to figure out who I was without Sarah. I had been half of a couple for so long that I had forgotten how to be a complete person on my own. The house felt enormous and hollow, every room echoing with memories that were now complicated and painful. The kitchen where we had cooked together, where I had proposed with a spatula in her hand. The living room where we had watched movies and hosted friends and made love on lazy Sunday mornings. The bedroom where we had whispered secrets and made plans and promised each other forever. Forever had lasted 13 years. In the grand scheme of things, that wasn't very long at all. I sold the house 6 months later. I couldn't keep living in a mausoleum of my former life. Couldn't keep walking past the mantel where I had hidden the recording device. Couldn't keep sleeping in the bed where Sarah had brought Marcus when I was supposed to be out of town. I bought a small condo downtown, modern and clean and completely free of history. I furnished it with new things, things that had never belonged to us, things that were only mine. I hung different pictures on the walls, pictures of places I had traveled alone, experiences that Sarah had never been part of. It felt like starting over at 38, learning how to be single again, how to make decisions without consulting someone else, how to fill the silence that had once been filled with shared conversation and comfortable companionship. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college. Started reading books that Sarah would have found boring. Started taking photography classes and learning to cook more elaborate meals and discovering that I actually enjoyed my own company more than I had expected. The anger faded gradually, replaced by something quieter and more complicated. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a kind of acceptance. Sarah had made her choices, and I had made mine, and we were both living with the consequences. She had wanted something different from what we had, and rather than ending our marriage honestly, she had tried to have both things simultaneously. It was selfish and cruel and ultimately self-destructive. But it was also human in the messiest, most painful way. I heard through mutual friends that she had moved to Portland, started working for a smaller marketing firm, was living alone in a studio apartment, and seemed to be struggling with the transition from married life to single life. I felt no satisfaction in her difficulties, but no sympathy either. She had chosen her path as deliberately as I had chosen mine. A year after the divorce was finalized, I met someone. Her name was Emma, and she was nothing like Sarah. Quiet where Sarah had been effervescent. Thoughtful where Sarah had been impulsive. Careful with her words where Sarah had been careless with her promises. Emma was a librarian. Divorced herself, with a 12-year-old daughter and a healthy skepticism about relationships that matched my own. We met at a coffee shop where I was working on a freelance project, and she was grading papers for a community college literature class she taught on weekends. We started slowly, cautiously, like to people who had been burned before and were determined not to make the same mistakes again. Coffee dates that stretched into dinners. Dinners that became weekend trips. Weekend trips that became quiet evenings at her house, helping her daughter with homework and learning the rhythms of a family that was different from anything I had experienced before. Emma knew about Sarah, about the divorce, about the betrayal that had ended my marriage. I told her the whole story one night after her daughter had gone to bed. Sitting on her back porch with glasses of wine and the summer air thick with the scent of jasmine, she listened without judgment, without trying to fix anything or make it better, just witnessing my story with a kind of patient attention that I realized I had been starving for. "Do you think you'll ever trust someone completely again?" she asked when I was finished. I considered the question seriously, watching her face in the porch light, noting the way she waited for my answer without rushing to fill the silence. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I thought I trusted Sarah completely, and look how that turned out. Maybe complete trust is overrated. Maybe it's better to love someone with your eyes wide open, understanding that people are complicated and capable of disappointing you and choosing to love them anyway." Emma smiled, a small, thoughtful smile that didn't promise anything but didn't hide anything either. "I think I could live with that kind of love," she said. "We've been together for 2 years now. We don't live together yet, though we've talked about it. We don't have any immediate plans for marriage, though we don't rule it out either. We take things as they come, day by day, choice by choice, trying to build something that's honest and sustainable and based on who we actually are rather than who we wish we were. I still think about Sarah sometimes, not with longing or regret, but with a kind of distant curiosity about the roads not taken, the life that might have been if she had chosen differently, if we had been able to weather the storms that ultimately sank us. I heard she got married again last year to someone she met in Portland. Someone new, someone who doesn't know about Marcus or the elaborate lies, or the way she can smile while breaking your heart. I hope she's happy. I hope she's learned something from the wreckage of our marriage. I hope she's become someone worthy of the trust her new husband is placing in her. But mostly, I don't think about it at all. I've learned to live in the present tense, to find joy in small things, to appreciate the quiet satisfaction of a life built on honesty and self-respect. I've learned that love is not enough by itself, that it needs to be supported by trust and commitment, and the daily choice to honor your promises even when it's difficult. I've learned that betrayal changes you in ways you don't expect, not just the obvious ways, the inability to take someone's word at face value, the hypervigilance about phone calls and text messages, the way your stomach drops when your partner is 5 minutes late coming home. Those are the surface wounds, the ones that heal with time and patience and new experiences that prove not everyone is Sarah. The deeper change is in how you see yourself. For months after the divorce, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been a fool, that there had been signs I should have seen, questions I should have asked, moments when I should have pushed harder for the truth instead of accepting comfortable lies. I replayed conversations in my head, looking for the clues I had missed, the red flags I had ignored. The exact moment when I could have saved my marriage, if only I had been smarter, more observant, more worthy of honesty. Emma helped me understand that this was another kind of betrayal, the way I was betraying myself by taking responsibility for Sarah's choices. "You trusted your wife," she said one evening, when I was spiraling into self. Again, that's not naive, that's not foolish, that's what marriage is supposed to be. She was right, of course, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different things entirely. It took years for me to stop feeling like I had been complicit in my own destruction, to understand that Sarah's ability to lie to me so convincingly said nothing about my intelligence or worth, and everything about her willingness to sacrifice our marriage for her own desires. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that the woman I had loved for 13 years, the woman I had trusted with my heart and my future and my most vulnerable self, was capable of looking me in the eye every day while systematically dismantling our life together. It was understanding that the last months of our marriage had been a performance, that while I was worrying about her happiness and stress levels and whether she needed more support from me, she was calculating how to manage her time between two relationships without getting caught. It was the knowledge that, on some level, she had been studying me, learning my patterns and blind spots, figuring out exactly how much deception I would accept before I started asking uncomfortable questions. The conference in Phoenix hadn't been an opportunity that fell into her lap. She had suggested I go, had encouraged me to extend the trip, had smiled and kissed me goodbye while planning to spend those days with Marcus in our home. Of premeditation was what haunted me, not a moment of weakness or a mistake that spiraled out of control, but a deliberate, sustained campaign of deception that required planning and effort and a kind of emotional compartmentalization that I couldn't comprehend. Sometimes I wondered if she had felt guilty at all, or if the guilt had been another performance for my benefit. When she cried during our confrontation, when she begged for another chance, when she said she had never meant to hurt me, was any of that real, or was it just another strategy, another attempt to control the narrative and minimize the consequences of her choices? I'll never know, and I've made peace with that uncertainty. What I know is this: Sarah made her choices, and I made mine, and we both have to live with the aftermath. She chose to risk everything we had built together for something new and exciting and ultimately ephemeral. I chose to end things cleanly rather than trying to rebuild on a foundation of lies and broken trust. Neither choice was easy. Neither choice was without cost. But they were our choices, and they led us to where we are now. I still live in that downtown condo, though I've made it more of a home over the years. Emma's daughter Maya has her own room there now, painted the pale green she chose herself, filled with books and art supplies and the comfortable clutter of a teenager who feels safe enough to leave her things scattered around. Emma has a drawer in my dresser, a toothbrush in my bathroom, a coffee mug that's become specifically hers. We're talking about buying a house together. Something bigger, something with a yard where Maya can have friends over and Emma can have the garden she's always wanted. We're talking about marriage too, tentatively. Like people who understand that promises are serious things that shouldn't be made lightly. Would you want a big wedding? Emma asked me last month, curled against my side on the couch, while Maya did homework at the kitchen table. I don't know, I said honestly. I used to think the wedding was the important part. Now, I think it's everything that comes after. She was quiet for a moment, tracing circles on my chest with her finger. I want to marry you, she said finally. Not because I need a wedding or a ring or a legal document, but because I want to choose you every day for the rest of our lives. I want to promise you that I'll be honest, even when it's hard. That I'll fight for us instead of running away when things get complicated. I felt something unlock in my chest, some knot of fear and skepticism that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I want to promise you that too, I said. We haven't set a date yet. We haven't even bought rings, but we've made the promise that matters. The one that's harder to keep than vows spoken in front of witnesses. We've promised to keep choosing each other, to keep showing up, to keep telling the truth even when it hurts. It's a different kind of love than what I had with Sarah. Less desperate, less all-consuming, but more sustainable. Built on who we actually are, rather than who we pretend to be or who we hope to become. Emma knows about my tendency to overanalyze my need for clear communication, my difficulty trusting completely. I know about her fierce protectiveness of Maya, her struggle with anxiety, her way of withdrawing when she feels overwhelmed. We don't pretend these things don't exist. We don't try to love each other despite our flaws, or wait for each other to become perfect. We love each other as we are, complicated and damaged and hopeful. Doing our best to build something honest and lasting, Maya, who is 14 now and wise beyond her years, told me recently that she likes how I am with her mother. You make her laugh, she said, but not like she has to perform for you, like she can just be herself. That might be the greatest compliment I've ever received. Think about Sarah less often now, but when I do, it's with something approaching gratitude. Not for the betrayal, not for the pain, but for the clarity that came after. For the understanding that I deserved better than someone who would lie to me every day while planning her exit strategy. For the realization that love, without respect, is just emotional servitude, that being chosen is meaningless if you're not chosen completely. Sarah taught me what I wouldn't accept in a relationship, what I wouldn't overlook or excuse or rationalize away. Emma is teaching me what I will accept, what real partnership looks like, what it means to build something together, rather than just existing side by side. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I had never seen that text message? If Sarah had been more careful with her phone, if I had remained oblivious to the affair until she was ready to leave on her own terms? Would I have spent years wondering what I had done wrong, why I hadn't been enough, how I had failed to keep her happy? Probably, and that thought terrifies me more than the betrayal itself. The idea that I might have spent years blaming myself for someone else's choices, accepting responsibility for problems I didn't create and couldn't solve, the truth, painful as it was, set me free. It allowed me to grieve the marriage I thought I had, instead of continuing to invest in one that existed only in my imagination. It allowed me to start over with clear eyes and honest expectations. It allowed me to eventually find someone who values the same things I value, who understands that love is a choice you make every day, not just a feeling that happens to you. I don't believe in fairy tales anymore, in soulmates or destiny or love. Conquering all, I believe in showing up. I believe in keeping your word. I believe in choosing someone who chooses you back, completely and without reservation. I believe in building something real together, day by day, choice by choice, truth by truth. That's enough. That's everything. The weight of silence that crushed me in those first days after discovering Sarah's betrayal has been replaced by a different kind of quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. The peace that comes from knowing who you are and what you're worth. From refusing to accept less than you deserve. From walking away from situations that diminish you rather than fighting to make them work. Sarah's betrayal was the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was also, in a strange way, one of the best. It forced me to confront truths I had been avoiding, to develop strength I didn't know I had, to learn the difference between being alone and being lonely. I'm not alone anymore. I'm with Emma and Maya in the condo that's become our home, planning a future that's built on honesty and mutual respect. I'm surrounded by friends who knew me through the worst of it and stayed anyway. I'm part of a community of people who understand that sometimes love means letting go. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst impulses. I'm grateful for the life I have now, even as I mourn the life I thought I wanted. Both feelings can be true simultaneously. Both feelings are necessary. Parts of the journey from who I was to who I'm becoming. The betrayal shaped me, but it didn't break me. The silence that once felt like drowning now feels like the space between words, the pause before speaking, the moment when you decide what's worth saying and what's worth keeping to yourself. I've learned to live in that space, to find comfort in the quiet, to understand that some stories end with explosions and others end with exhales. Mine ended with both the explosive discovery of Sarah's affair, followed by the long, slow exhale of healing and rebuilding and learning to trust again. I'm still learning. Every day with Emma and Maya teaches me something new about love and commitment and the courage it takes to be vulnerable with someone who has the power to hurt you. Every day I choose to believe that not everyone is Sarah, that not every promise will be broken, that it's possible to build something lasting if you're willing to do the work. The work is hard, the work is daily, the work is worth it, and sometimes, late at night when Emma is asleep beside me and Maya is safe in her room and the condo is quiet around us, I feel something I never thought I'd feel again after Sarah. Complete peace. Not the absence of problems or challenges or uncertainties, but the presence of people who love me as I am, who choose me as I am, who build with me rather than taking from me. That's the real revenge, I suppose, not the divorce or the evidence, or the public consequences of Sarah's choices, but this, a life so full of genuine love and respect that her betrayal becomes just one chapter in a longer story. Not the ending I once thought it was. The silence isn't empty anymore. It's full of possibility.